Fear is an emotional response induced by the perception of a real or imagined threat, danger, or harm. G. Stanley Hall, the founder of the American Journal of Psychology and the first president of the American Psychological Association, quite simply defined fear as the anticipation of pain. Being an emotional response, fear is a constant dictator in everyone's choices and lifestyles. Around 19 million, or 9.1% of American adults have a specific phobia that, when present, induces them into a strong and anxious demeanor. This is the second video I've created on the subject, and I recommend everyone watch the first one and support the channel. Thank you, and let's begin. Phasmophobia is the intense, persistent fear of ghosts. Although ghosts have never been proven, people with this phobia display severe anxiety when they believe a ghost or supernatural being has the possibility of interacting with them. These types of people will especially get anxious when someone has recently died or they are in an area of someone's passing, such as a hospital or graveyard. .525 South Winchester Boulevard in San Jose houses a very strange and abstruse residency, the Winchester Mystery House, or formerly called, at the time it was built, Sarah Winchester's house. Sarah Winchester was estimated to be born around 1840 and grew up in very, very wealthy arms. She learned 4 languages thanks to her excellent schooling and married William Wirt Winchester, the owner of Winchester Repeating Arms Company. The two of them would end up having a daughter named Annie, and life up to this point was very great for Sarah. However, tragedy struck in Sarah's late 20s as Annie would end up dying, followed by the death of her spouse William only a short time later. William's death left her with $20 million, over $500 million today, and a constant income thanks to the business of $1,000 a day, an equivalent of $30,000 today. Sarah was now in possession of a large fortune, but without a family to share it. So, she decided to go to a psychic in hopes of getting her guidance from the recently departed William. Thanks to the psychic, Sarah would leave her house in New Haven and head west to California, claiming William himself had directed her to do so. And what to do with all the money? William had an answer for that too. Sarah was now set to build a multi-million-dollar house to please all the unhappy spirits that had fallen victim to Winchester rifles, or she'd be haunted by them for the rest of her life.
Before the construction of any project, the architect carefully prepares working plans so that correct coordination of all trades is conveyed to its position on the job. The concrete is rammed or puddled in between and around the reinforcing bars, and lime must be slaked before mixing with sand to form mortar, and lime should stand for several days before using. The bricklayer turns the mortar tiles. The roof plumber must fix the eaves gutter because the tiler works from the gutter upwards. The roof tiler is the next tradesman to come onto the job. His job is to cover and make watertight the roof framework. Having completed the building, attention must now be given to outside requirements. Paths must be formed, steps built, and all work left clean and tidy on completion. The architect, builder, and everybody concerned is pleased and satisfied with the result of this. How small your task.
Your part is necessary in order to achieve a successful objective. Remember, teamwork ensures success.
Come back alive. Come back alive.
A now anxious and likely schizophrenic Sarah began direction of the Winchester Mystery House. She would begin by purchasing a small, unfinished farmhouse, but quickly, development would ramp up after Sarah hired several carpenters to work around the clock. However, The house lacked any form of plan, and quickly designs began to become manufactured haphazardly. Rooms were built onto outer walls, creating windows that faced other rooms. Various staircases were also constructed, each with steps of different heights, giving them a distorted appearance. Strangely, many of the modifications seemed pointless. Staircases would ascend several levels, only to end abruptly, doors would open to solid walls, and hallways would turn a corner and end in a dead end. By the turn of the century, Sarah Winchester had her ghost house, a bizarrely designed mansion with 7 stories, 161 rooms, 47 fireplaces, 10,000 panes of glass, 2 basements, 3 elevators, and a mysterious, funhouse-like interior. The contractors working on the house reported that Winchester held daily meetings with local psychics to reach, quote, good spirits, unquote. These good spirits were consulted to determine how best to appease the spirits from whom she was allegedly building the house. It is said that these spirits prompted Winchester to make many illogical additions to the home. Long after the construction was finished, Winchester continued her efforts to appease the victims of Winchester rifles. Out of 13 bathrooms in the house, only 1 was functional, a measure intended to confuse any ghost attempting to haunt a faucet. Additionally, she slept in different rooms each night and used secret passageways to move from room to room, ensuring that no spirits could follow her. During the years Sarah Winchester lived in the house, the residents of San Jose whispered about its strange construction and even stranger inhabitant. Unfortunately, in 1904, an earthquake hit San Jose, causing significant damage to the Winchester Mystery House. However, due to the building's floating foundation, which balances the weight of the surrounding soil, the house was spared from collapse. The top 3 floors were eventually removed, leaving the house with the 4 stories it has today. Following her death, the house would be passed around and auctioned off. This would cause it to be remodeled and refurbished, and just 5 months after Sarah's death became the tourist site it is today.
Come back.
Aerophobia is the intense, persistent fear of flying. Despite air travel being statistically one of the safest modes of transportation, individuals with this phobia experience severe anxiety at the thought of being on an airplane. This anxiety can manifest during various stages of flight, such as takeoff, turbulence, or landing. People with aerophobia often avoid flying altogether, which can significantly impact their personal and professional lives. Even the mere sight or mention of an airplane can trigger feelings of panic, making it challenging for them to cope with situations involving air travel. On March 24, 2015, Germanwings Flight 9525 departed from Spain and headed towards Germany. Operated by Germanwings, a low-cost carrier, the flight was carrying 144 passengers and 6 crew members. The aircraft took off at 10:01 a.m., 26 minutes behind schedule. Everything seemed routine as the plane reached its cruising altitude of 38,000 feet. However, at 10:31 a.m., the aircraft began an unapproved descent towards the French Alps. Unfortunately, the aircraft would ultimately crash into the Alps, but this left investigators one question: what happened? The flight was commanded by Captain Patrick Sodenheimer, a seasoned pilot with 10 years of experience and 6,000 flight hours. The co-pilot, Andres Lebitz, had joined Germanwings in 2013 and had 630 flying hours. Lebitz's history included a severe episode of depression in 2008, which had temporarily halted his pilot training. Despite being declared fit to resume training, Lebitz continued to struggle with mental health issues, which he concealed from his employer. After investigation, the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder were recovered and analyzed, revealing the absolute horrifying truth.
Ich muss auf die Toilette.
Du kannst jetzt gehen.
Sie können übernehmen. Um Gottes Willen, machen Sie die Tür auf. Sinkgeschwindigkeit. 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 Sink. Gelände hochziehen, Gelände hochziehen, Gelände hochziehen, Gelände hochziehen, Gelände. Gelände hochziehen, 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 Gelände hochziehen.
During the flight, when the captain was out of the cockpit, Lubitz locked the cockpit door and initiated a controlled descent into the mountainside. The voice recorder picked up banging on the cockpit door as people tried to bust the door down. However, it proved unsuccessful, and the screams of everyone on board could be heard before the ultimate crash. Lubitz's actions were premeditated, as investigation found he had gone out of his way to practice similar maneuvers during an onboard flight. Germanwings Flight 9525 has gone down as one of the most terrifying flights in history, since each passenger was aware of what was going on and how helpless they were to stop it. Following the flight, rules were changed to require 2 pilots in the cockpit at all times, and a memorial was built for the victims who at no point deserved the outcome they were given. The tragedy of Germanwings Flight 9525 was defined by the terrifying realization that every passenger was powerless to prevent their fate. This dreadful sense of inevitability mirrors the horror experienced aboard Japan Airlines Flight 123. Just as the Germanwings passengers faced an unthinkable situation, so too did those aboard Flight 123, as their routine journey turned into a nightmare beyond their control. On August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 departed from Tokyo's Haneda Airport, bound for Osaka. The flight was a routine domestic trip carrying 524 people. 509 of those people were passengers, and the other 15 were crew members. The aircraft, a Boeing 747SR, was modified for high-density seating to serve Japan's busy domestic routes. However, the flight would tragically become the deadliest single aircraft disaster in aviation history. At 6:12 p.m., Flight 123 took off from Tokyo. Just 12 minutes later, a loud explosion echoed through the aircraft, and the cabin rapidly began to decompress. Passengers struggled to breathe as oxygen masks deployed. The plane had suffered a catastrophic failure. The rear pressure bulkhead, which had been improperly repaired after a tail strike incident in 1978, finally gave way. This failure caused a massive decompression that tore off the vertical stabilizer and severed all 4 hydraulic lines, leaving the plane barely controllable. In the cockpit, Captain Masami Takahama, First Officer Yotaka Sasaki, and Flight Engineer Hiroshi Fukuda fought desperately to regain control. With the hydraulics gone, the flight controls were essentially useless. The crew attempted to steer using engine power, but this only provided limited control. The aircraft oscillated wildly, rising and falling as it veered off course. For 32 agonizing minutes, the passengers and crew endured a nightmare. Despite the crew's best efforts, the aircraft descended, eventually crashing into Mount Takamahagara. Fully aware of their dire situation, Some passengers wrote farewell notes to loved ones, while others held on to each other in silent terror. At 6:56 p.m., the Boeing 747 collided with the mountainside, breaking apart and scattering debris over a wide area. Out of the 524 people on board, only 4 survived, 3 women and 1 child, all seated towards the rear of the plane. The survivors were left stranded in the mountains, and many more died from their injuries before rescue teams could even reach them. The investigation revealed a tragic truth. The structural failure was preventable. Lessons learned from this disaster led to significant changes in aircraft maintenance practices, emphasizing rigorous inspection and repair procedures. Japan Airlines Flight 123 is remembered for the scale of the tragedy and its haunting knowledge that passengers knew their fate was sealed. The crash site has since become a place of mourning and reflection, where families of the victims and those who narrowly escaped the flight pay their respects to the lives lost in one of aviation's darkest moments. Chemophobia is the intense, persistent fear of chemicals and synthetic substances. Even though many chemicals are safe and essential for daily life, individuals with this phobia experience severe anxiety at the thought of coming into contact with them. This fear can be triggered by anything from household cleaning products to processed foods and medications. People with chemophobia often go to great lengths to avoid exposure, opting for natural, organic alternatives and meticulously reading labels to ensure their safety. The sight or mention of chemicals can cause significant distress, making it difficult for them to navigate environments where chemicals are present. The Bhopal Disaster, often called the Bhopal gas tragedy, is one of the worst industrial disasters in history. It happened on the night of December 2nd and 3rd, 1984, in Bhopal, a city in central India. The tragedy began at a pesticide plant owned by Union Carbide India Limited, UCIL for short, a company partially controlled by the Union Carbide Corporation, UCC, from the United States. UCIL's plant in Bhopal was built in 1969 to produce a pesticide called Sevin, using MIC as a key ingredient. MIC is extremely dangerous, and its safe storage and handling require strict safety measures. However, by the early 1980s, the demand for pesticides had decreased, but the plant continued producing, leading to a buildup of MIC. Unfortunately, this buildup occurred despite known leaks and safety concerns in the plant. Before the disaster, there were numerous warnings that the plant was unsafe. As early as 1976, local trade unions complained about pollution. There were also several smaller leaks that injured workers and in some cases killed them. One journalist even wrote about the plant, warning people of Bhopal that they were, quote, on the edge of a volcano, unquote. Despite these warnings, the plant continued operating without addressing underlying safety issues. In the months leading up to the disaster, the plant's safety systems were not working properly. On the night of December 2nd, 1984, water somehow entered one of the storage tanks, which held 42 tons of MIC. The water caused a chemical reaction that rapidly increased the temperature and pressure inside the tank. This reaction released a large cloud of toxic gas into the atmosphere. The gas spread quickly, carried by the wind, and within hours, thousands of people in the surrounding area were exposed.
जल्दी करिए, और बस खड़ी, जल्दी करिए ना। मरीजों को लाने में दिक्कत हो रही है, कृपया मरीजों को उठाने में मदद। वॉलंटियर भीड़ पीछे हुई है, बस को आगे बढ़ने दीजिए। अशोक जैन भावा, अशोक जैन भावा, जहां भी हो इमीडिएट।
We have organized a technical team which is being dispatched to India to cooperate with the authorities there. We have also sent to India a physician from this country who is the world's expert on the treatment of individuals who have come in contact with the methyl isocyanate or MIC.
The initial effects were horrifying. People experienced severe eye irritation, coughing, and a feeling of suffocation. Those who tried to escape on foot were the most exposed, especially children who were closer to the ground where the gas was most concentrated. By the next morning, thousands were dead and many more were injured. The hospitals were overwhelmed and the doctors didn't know how to treat the gas exposure as they had no experience with MIC. The gas not only killed people but also caused long-term health problems, including cancer and blindness. The environment suffered too. Animals died and plants withered. In the years that followed, the legal battle over responsibility for the disaster was long and complex. Union Carbide Corporation and its CEO at the time, Warren Anderson, faced both civil and criminal charges in India and the United States. However, unfortunately, most of these cases were dismissed or redirected to Indian courts. In India, 7 former UCIL employees were convicted of negligence and sentenced to 2 years in prison, but they were released on bail shortly after. Union Carbide paid $470 million in 1989 to settle litigations related to the disaster, but for many victims, this compensation was inadequate. Over time, Union Carbide distanced itself from the disaster, selling its stake in UCIL and eventually being bought by Dow Chemical Company in 2001, long after the disaster. The Bhopal disaster left a lasting impact on the city and its people. Many survivors continued to suffer from health problems, and the site of the plant remains contaminated. The disaster also highlighted the risks of industrial negligence, especially when corporations prioritize profits over safety. Despite the compensation paid, many victims felt that justice was never fully served, as the responsible parties faced few consequences compared to the scale of the tragedy. Videos like these take an incredibly long amount of time, so showing support to this video will help out incredibly. Thank you and goodbye.